Today's video is the continuation of a series, where I bring attention to players who get less recognition than they deserve. It can be superstar players or quality role players, as long as it's a player who general audiences could learn about. Hopefully, with this series, you'll gain a greater understanding and appreciation of many players from basketball history. I'm starting off by going in alphabetical order of the players' last names. So let me know in the comments who are some players that you would like to see in this series. Also, assuming this series does well, I would be very happy to go through the alphabet several times, seeing how there's so many players to learn about. So if you'd like to see more, please make sure to like and comment to help the video. So without further ado, let's get into it. Michael Finley. From the late 90s to the mid-2000s, he was usually the Mavericks' second leading scorer behind Dirk Nowitzki, and he was a massive contributor to their top-seeded teams. Finley was a 6'7" small forward who was an above-the-rim athlete, and he was quite the slasher. But beyond that, he was also an elite three-point shooter in his prime, getting as high as 40.7% in 2005. He was an absolute workhorse, as he led the NBA in minutes per game in 3 separate seasons, and specifically in the 2002 playoffs, he played 46.6 minutes per game, which is insane even by the standards of that era. He was a 2-time All-Star and averaged at least 20 points per game in 5 consecutive seasons. In a roundabout way, Dirk's championship in 2011 kind of made people forget about some of the great teammates he had in the years before that, and Finley was one of the better ones. Walt Frazier. Many people know the name, but a lot seem to be unaware of his incredible skills. Clyde Frazier was a 6'4" point guard who was one of the best two-way players of his era. On offense, he was a very intelligent floor general, who had a silky smooth handle of the basketball and was very crafty with his passes. On defense, he was an absolute pest, who had great on-ball defense, but he also had great instincts, as he was always jumping the passing lanes. In total, he made 7 all-defense teams and was an all-star player during both of New York's championship runs in the 1970s. In a way, he was basically the Gary Payton of the 1970s. But in the modern basketball discussions, he's not usually given that much credit. Steve Francis. As a 6'3" point guard, he was extremely similar to greats like Derrick Rose and Russell Westbrook, in the sense that they were explosive and thunderous finishers at the rim despite their lack of size. He could be considered as one of the greatest what-ifs of basketball history, as he came into the league out of Maryland as the 2nd overall pick, and in the year 2000, he was honored with the NBA's Rookie of the Year award. But unfortunately, he never truly reached the peak of his potential due to injuries, and by the age of 31, he had played his final game in the league. He earned 3 straight All-Star selections and averaged about 26-6 in that time frame. With his solid handle and with his tremendous athleticism, Stevie Franchise could have been a legitimate star in just about any era. World B. Free. In the 70s and 80s, this guy was an absolute bucket getter, as he was always a threat in transition with one of the best pull-up jumpers that the game had to offer. He was known for his quote rainbow shots due to the extreme arc on the ball from his jumpers. As an undersized 6'2" shooting guard, he had his mind set on one thing, and that was scoring in bunches. He was an efficient three-point shooter at a time when there wasn't many of them. At his peak in 1980, he averaged 30 points on solid shooting splits, and the highlight of that season was when he torched Magic Johnson in his career debut by dropping 46 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, and 7 steals on 65% shooting, naturally making it one of the most brutal welcome to the NBA moments. Unfortunately, the prime of his career was spent on either bad or mediocre teams, like the Clippers and Warriors, so he was never competing for championships at his apex. Regardless, he was one of the most talented players of his era who is certainly worth remembering. Artis Gilmore. Most kids nowadays know this guy as the starting center of the Bulls' all-time team in NBA 2K. But he's worth way more recognition than just that. This 7'2" tower was a legendary center in Chicago, but arguably his peak was well before that in the ABA. In only his rookie season in the American Basketball Association, he averaged an absurd 24 points, 18 rebounds, 3 assists, and a whopping 5 blocks. Not only was he the best of the rookie class, but that performance led him to win the MVP award. He led the league in field goal percentage 6 times. He led the league in rebounding 4 times. He made 11 All-Star teams, 5 All-Defense teams, and was an ABA champion with Kentucky in 1975. There's a lot of underrated centers in basketball history, but without a doubt, Gilmore is in the debate for being the most underrated. Gail Goodrich. He's one of the least recognized Laker legends, and that kinda sucks considering the massive impact he had for their success. When you think of the 1972 championship team that won 33 straight games, people usually mention Wilt Chamberlain and Jerry West. But the leading scorer of that squad was actually Gail Goodrich, as he put up 26 a game on 49% shooting. He was usually scoring in transition, and he also had a solid mid-range jumper. This 6'1" guard went on to make 5 All-Star teams and is in the Basketball Hall of Fame. He's definitely a candidate for the title of the most underappreciated Laker of all time. Ben Gordon. Most people don't know about this guy in depth, but I guarantee you that any longtime Chicago fan will. Gordon was a 6'3" shooting guard who was always looking to score. He was a 6th Man of the Year winner in his rookie season, as he was perfectly built to be a massive scoring spark off the bench. He was also one of the best three-point shooters of his era, as he shot over 40% from three-point range over the course of his career. He was also a tremendously clutch shooter, who provided some epic late-game heroics for his Bulls in the postseason. An ankle injury that resulted in surgery really took a toll on his explosiveness, and as a result, Gordon didn't have a very long NBA career, which may be why he's rarely thought of by basketball fans. Danny Granger. As a 6'9" small forward who could handle the ball, who could explode at the rim, and who could score from basically everywhere on the court, he was basically like a discount version of a prime Tracy McGrady. For a little while in Indiana, he looked like he was on his way to becoming a legitimate superstar. In 2009, at only the age of 25, he was an NBA All-Star and won the league's Most Improved Player award while averaging 26 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists on 45% shooting. The one thing he did better than guys like McGrady and Kobe was three-point shooting, as he was hitting a deadly 40% of his attempts during his peak, while being among the league leaders in three-pointers attempted. As in the case of many guys in this series, Granger's body betrayed him, as a plethora of injuries had him rapidly declining before he even reached the age of 30. And at only the age of 31, he had played his last game in the NBA. Hal Greer. When talking about the 60s era, many people act like Bill Russell had all the All-Stars, while Wilt Chamberlain had no one to help him whatsoever. And that isn't completely true, because he often had this guy, the 6'2" shooting guard Hal Greer. He's an NBA Hall of Famer who made 10 All-Star teams, 7 All-NBA teams, and was a massive contributor towards the 76ers championship in 1967. He didn't always have the tightest handle of the basketball, but what he had was a solid pull-up jumper and a strong layup package when he got to the rim. This shifty guard even got as high as 6th in the MVP rankings in 1964, where he averaged 23 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists. If anyone ever says that Wilt Chamberlain had no help, make sure to educate them about the Bulldog Hal Greer. Darrell Griffith. Nowadays, people will say that the 80s were filled with unathletic plumbers, but the truth is, they just don't know basketball history, because any knowledgeable fan wouldn't say that about guys like Darrell Griffith. This 6'4" guard was literally nicknamed Dr. Duncanstein for his incredible play above the rim. He was the NBA's Rookie of the Year in 1981, And for about a 5-year stretch, he was one of Utah's top scorers, leading up to the draft selections of John Stockton and Karl Malone. He had a strong layup package with impressive body control. Beyond that, he was a pretty solid shooter for his time, as he led all players in three-point efficiency in 1984. He was never an all-star, but he was a borderline star who was a heck of an athlete. So what do you guys think? Who is a player that you'd like to see me talk about in this series? I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments section below. Thanks for watching as always. Make sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.